The fall. There are moments in life when everything seems to fall perfectly into place, when dreams appear so close that you can almost touch them. For Rohan, that moment arrived at the age of 31. He had worked tirelessly for nearly a decade in a mid-level corporate job, saving every rupee he could, cutting down on luxuries and chasing one goal: to own a home for his parents. His father had retired early due to health issues, and his mother, ever supportive, had quietly sacrificed her own comfort for years so Rohan could rise. A small house of their own, that was all he wanted. A place where his parents could rest without worry, where he could finally say, "We made it." Rohan's search led him to a property development that promised modern homes at a surprisingly reasonable price. The company looked legitimate, with glossy brochures, a polished website, and even a showroom that gleamed with potential. The agent spoke with confidence, showing him pictures of happy families already settled in nearby blocks. Everything seemed real, everything seemed right, and for once life felt like it was rewarding his years of struggle. He liquidated nearly all his savings, took a personal loan and placed the down payment. The rest he planned to pay off with careful installments over the next few years. It was a risk, yes, but one that felt worth taking. Every morning he woke with renewed energy, imagining his parents sipping tea on the balcony of their new home. But sometimes dreams collapse quietly before anyone notices. Weeks passed, and the construction site that once buzzed with activity began to slow down. Workers disappeared, material stopped arriving, and excuses began piling up. The developer blamed weather delays, labor shortages, and new regulations. At first, Rohan remained patient, hopeful even. After all, delays were normal in real estate. But then came the day that shattered everything. The gates of the construction site were locked, the office phones disconnected, and the company's website vanished overnight. Rohan stood before the half-built structure, his heart sinking deeper than he thought possible. It was gone, everything. The company, the money, the dream. Along with hundreds of others, he had been scammed by a fraudulent developer who had taken millions and vanished. He filed a police complaint, but like many such cases, it drowned in a sea of paperwork and hopeless victims. Days turned into weeks, and Rohan spiraled into silence. The once ambitious man who had worked long nights was now a shadow of himself. He stopped showing up for work, unable to face colleagues who would ask about his new home. He avoided family gatherings, too ashamed to admit what had happened. The guilt was heavier than the loss. He had used his parents' trust, their savings, their hope, and turned it into dust. Nights stretched endlessly. He would sit by the small window of their rented apartment, staring at the city lights, wondering how life could be so cruel. His father tried to console him. His mother prayed silently, but inside Rohan felt broken beyond repair. The pain wasn't just financial, it was emotional, spiritual. He had built his entire identity around success, and now it had been ripped away. One evening, as rain poured against the cracked window, he looked around his dimly lit room. The unpaid bills, the unopened letters, the untouched laptop, and realized he couldn't continue like this. Something inside him whispered that the story wasn't over yet. Perhaps, he thought, this fall was not meant to destroy him but to rebuild him differently. And so, with trembling hands, he opened his laptop again, not to check the scam updates or complain on social media, but to search, to learn, to understand. If life had taken everything, it could not take his will to rise again. That night marked the end of one chapter, the chapter of loss, of pain, of everything crumbling. But it also marked the faint beginning of something else, something that would soon change his destiny. Because karma, though silent, was already on its way back.